This video is going to be about multiplying expressions. Multiplying expressions. And essentially what it does is make more simple the expression of one letter multiplied by another letter. Let's take the example of if we had C times by D. Now C and D could be anything. We don't know what they are expressions of, but they are expressions. And C times by D, the way we write it is CD. That makes it a little bit simpler. So instead of having 3 symbols, we only have 2. And because they're next to each other in maths, that shows that they're multiplied together. The same thing is true if we had numbers. 2 times by P, we write as 2P. That means 2 multiplied by P. So we don't need the times in the middle anymore. It's simpler in maths just to write 2P. What happens if we have numbers and different kinds of letters? So 5 times by X, well, so that's not going to work. 5 times by U times by W. Again, we write them all together, symbolizing the fact that they're all multiplied by each other. So this would be 5UW. Let's change that to light blue. How about if we had the same letter multiplied by itself? This is where we go into indices or powers. What do I mean? E times by E, we don't write EE. The reason is because with EE it may look a bit simpler. But what if we had E times by E times by E times by E times by E? We'd end up going E, which just would be embarrassing. So instead we write E with a little number showing how many times we've multiplied it by itself. So in this case we've multiplied E by itself 2 times. So we write E with a little 2, which means E squared, or E to the power of 2. I've done another video on powers, so that won't be the focus of this video, but just to recap, when you times a number by itself 2 times, so just E times E, you get E squared. Similarly, if you had F times by F times by F, you would have F with, you guessed it, a little 3. That would be F cubed. Let's try numbers and letters multiplied at the same time. So 4, let's change the colour, 4 in grey. 4 times by P times by 6 times by P. Well, as you can imagine, they're all going to be right together, and what's going to come first is the number. We don't tend to write, if we look over to the left, P2 or UW5, because then it can be confusing about whether you mean E squared or 2E. If we're just multiplying it, we write 2P with a number first, and we tend to keep it in alphabetical order, so it would be CD rather than DC, and UW. In this case, we're going to do the numbers first. So what's 4 times 6? That would be 24, and P times by P would be P squared. And you notice we write them all together, 24P squared, with a number coming first. Let's try a harder one, really hard one to finish. If we had 7 times by R times by S times by 3 times by R times by R, what would all that nonsense be? All that nonsense would, in fact, equal, the number would come first. So 7 times by 3, what would 7 times by 3 be? 7 times by 3 would be 21. Then we would do the first letter in the alphabet, so that would be R. And how many R's have we got? We've got R times by R times by R, which is indeed R to the power of 3, because it's times by itself 3 times. And we have an S, so the S just goes straight on next to it. So 7 times by r times by s times by 3 times by r times by r would in fact be, and we've made it so much simpler, 21 r cubed s.